All right, and we are now recording again. So
Okay.
I'll just start it off. So what is going on, guys? Welcome to a podcast style episode with Jason Gardner, former Navy SEAL. I heard of him through the Jocko podcast where him and Jocko spoke. I think you guys have like 3 or 4 now, right?
I've done 3 podcasts with Jocko, and then one on Cleared Hot with Andy Stump,
Yeah.
and then another one on Behind the Shield with James Gearing. So I've done 5 total with the 3 that I did with Jocko and those other 2.
Right. Awesome. Yeah, that's how I heard of Jason at first, and I listened to both the podcasts with Jocko. It's a total of like 5 hours of listening, and it was awesome. And I'm not even going to go into what happened. I'm embarrassed about the past. Let's just say me and Jason spoke once or twice, but you guys didn't get the benefit of that.
Had some technical difficulties beyond our control.
Yeah. But Jason was kind enough to be willing to do this talk, and basically for this talk I wanted to switch it up because for those of you guys following, I've done quite a few podcast or interviews where I basically come up with a list of questions beforehand, and then I just ask them kind of interview style, which is cool, but sometimes it's a bit rigid, and oftentimes I get into this kind of mindset where I'm like, okay, my channel is Spartan Ownership, and I'm interviewing an ex-military person, so I'm going to ask these kinds of questions, and I make it like this. So how was the military like? Or what do you think mental toughness is? And things like that. And it's it's great and all, but if you guys follow my stuff or any of this kind of stuff, then you'll see that there's already a lot of content out there like this, and it's not that groundbreaking to hear what being a man means or something. So for this video, basically I wanted to switch it up and make it more free-flowing, more spontaneous, more creative, and really just be 2 men just getting down to some really interesting topics and talking about what really matters. And I'll start it off with a mistake or a bias that I've been having for years now, Jason, and it's that for years I was the guy that like read the books and knew all the terminology and shit, but I didn't actually know what it meant to apply a lot of it, and I just lived in my head, not in the real world. I lived in like a fake reality basically that I created, and I'm going through a bit of an anti-intellectual phase right now where I'm not like reading as much, and I'm just trying to like live more.
Yeah.
And just trying to focus on like what works instead of just what makes sense and shit, and stuff like that. And you were the highest rank you can get as an enlisted man, right? In the Navy.
Yeah. I made it to Command Master Chief Petty Officer Z9, and that's as high as you can go in the enlisted ranks.
Yeah, that is incredible, and that means that you've been in an organization that pretty much prioritizes results over theory, right?
I would say so. When we get into this discussion about reading and, versus experience is better, but reading allows you to get experience without doing. For instance, I can read about what they went through on the Bataan Death March and get some experience out of it. So reading is really kind of experience light.
Yeah.
However, I think when you have like a foundational experience with something and then you're able to read about it, then what you've read is more powerful and sticks a little bit more.
Oh yeah, for sure. You combine the two. And but what I've been realizing too is that like there's a lot of things that you can't really explain, but that
Yes.
And it's so hard for me to understand that because for years I always thought like, oh, I know what's going on with me right now. I know why I feel bad. It's because this, and then I'd go off into a theory about psychology or, oh, I know what's wrong with your relationship. I heard Jordan Peterson say blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I think that I could explain everything away. But then I realized, like, dude, your explanations don't mean anything. They're just words and theories about what you think is going on. But the reality could be much different than what you think you know. And I guess, you know, a lot of this is coming to grips with the fact that there's a lot of shit we don't know, and we just have to be okay with that.
Yeah, you have to submit to whatever the facts or the reality or the environment that you're in, right? So it doesn't matter so much why it's 30 degrees outside, really, because it just is. It's so, you know, what matters is that you're cold. And that's not, I don't think, an oversimplification of it. And in the end of the day, it comes down to we only have control over the decisions we make. And then when you're able to prioritize what you can affect and what you can't, man, life gets a lot easier. And that's a road that I've really been digging into lately here, thinking a lot of these, you know, these ideas that the Stoics really came up with. And well, once you just let go of a lot of that stuff, everything becomes easier, less of a challenge, and then you're able to apply your will better.
Oh, that's a big one, man. Stoicism. So you've been like getting into it more, trying to. Who do you read for that? Like Seneca?
Seneca's stuff. Although I think that a lot of the things that I've seen Marcus Aurelius say is a little bit more dialed in than Seneca, and I've just seen bits and pieces of the stuff that Seneca talks about, and I've got Marcus Aurelius's meditations, which are kind of cool because the stuff he's saying in there, you know, they just basically took his journal and published it. And the guy says stuff like, don't ever be overheard complaining, even by yourself. You know, and so he's laying out for himself. He's like, don't complain. That's huge. If I could just master that aspect of it, and not so much like out loud, but even inside of my head, in that internal dialogue that I've got going on all the time, and catch it and stop doing that, just that one piece would clean up a lot. But, you know, thinking about it, thinking about detachment, that, you know, Jocko talks about that all the time. And then the fact that, like, you go, ooh, I'm getting angry right now. Why am I angry? Is this something I can control? No, it isn't. Yesterday, I barked at my kids. You know, I yelled at my daughter because she was hurting her brother. And I just, as I was doing it, I'm like, yeah, you've just lost your temper a little bit. And she requires a little bit of discipline, but do I really need to raise my voice to do it? No. The only time I really need to raise my voice is like if they've walked out into the street and I need to get them, you know, safety concerns. Other than that, I shouldn't be raising my voice at them. And believe me, that doesn't mean that they're not going to get disciplined. It just means that the discipline is going to get metered out in a tone where I'm not upset, you know? And so this is this road that I've been kind of going down pretty slow because it's hard to do. Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, that's it. Just trying to be aware in the moment of where your emotions are carrying you is super difficult. And if you can just get that down, then life will be better. And I won't say you'll be happier, because I also let go of the thought that the ideal where I want to be is to be happy. I think the ideal is to have purpose. So if you've got purpose, then you will be content, and happiness can come later. But happiness is an ideal, is a shallow ideal, and it's like trying to hold water in your hands. And just as soon as you forget about trying to be happy, then you'll be okay. But that in itself is difficult too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Like letting go of happiness as this ideal and just using purpose and getting happiness as a byproduct of that. Yeah, for sure.
Yep, that articulates what I was thinking a little bit better than I just said it.
Hmm. Yeah, Stoicism is huge, I think. I mean, it's like such a strong mindset to live by, and I've definitely been getting into it quite a bit more. And another thing too is like inner dialogue. That you mentioned that, and I notice I talk so much in my own head, and for some weird reason, I take a lot of my own thoughts really seriously, and it just bums me out. And all throughout the day, I have these negative kind of ups and downs just based on my own thoughts. And I've been trying so hard to just distance myself from my own thoughts, but I feel like neurotic as hell sometimes, like just consumed by my own thoughts. I don't know if you ever experienced that.
Yeah, everybody does. Absolutely freaking everybody is the victim of the same thing that you're talking about. I got the dialogue in my head. They're not different. Here's what's unfortunate about it is they're not different voices. So the voice inside my head that is bitching about whatever, I'm hot, or this water doesn't taste good, or just all that weak sauce, right, is the same voice in my head that'll be saying positive stuff. So it's not as clear cut as an angel or a devil sitting on each shoulder like the old cartoons used to have. Mm-hmm. And ergo, it's hard to turn off that voice that's negative, that's self-destructive, that's beating yourself up. Because I guarantee you, for you, me, everyone else, our harshest critics are ourselves. Our harshest critic is the one that when you look in the mirror and see some minor flaw that no one else even notices that you pick up, or some of the other internal stuff. And I thought about these things. I've come up with these prime directives that I'm still kind of working on. That's outlining my basic philosophy, just on life, on how to be the best person that I can be. And one of them is an aspect of kindness and treating other people with kindness through a filter of kindness, but starting with yourself. You need to be kind for yourself. I think that's why Jordan Peterson put it in the book. I forget which rule it is, but it's like treat yourself as if you're worth someone taking care of, or the same way you take care of your pets, because a lot of people won't do that. And man, that's huge. And it's huge to hear from other people that other people are like, hey, I have this internal dialogue, and I beat the crap out of myself in that internal dialogue. And I know that, like, for instance, when I heard Mike Sorelli, when he was on the Jocko podcast, and he was talking about some of the issues he had after he was up on that rooftop when Mike Mansour was killed, and he dealt with a lot of guilt. And it's like, why would you be dealing with guilt, bro? That's crazy. From the outside looking in, but internally he's beating himself up. And it was really good to hear him say that as someone I respect, because I'm like, dang it, that I do this crap all the time. I am always hammering myself. And it's not, I'm word searching here. It's not productive, period. You're not moving forward by beating yourself up. You move forward when you're giving yourself like, hey, I didn't do that good on that thing. Mm-hmm. And I could do better, but it's not productive just to beat yourself up. And there's a lady that we were listening to a book. We were on a trip here lately. Hold on. Iris, do you remember what her name was?
What book?
The one about shame and guilt.
Brene Brown.
Brene Brown. And she's talking about shame and guilt. And then there's another lady who's written another book, Good Morning, I Love You. And she is Shauna Spearco, I believe. I'll look that up here in a second. Shauna Shapiro is actually her name. And she comes from an angle of just mindfulness, okay? And this is stuff that before mindfulness was a little bit woo-woo for me.
Yeah.
And now I've discovered that it's more helpful than any damn drug I've ever taken as far as like trying to unscrew my psyche,
Right.
and deal with the negativity. And both of them are just like, hey, shame is bad and it's not helpful and it's going to pull you downwards where guilt is good. The difference between the two, as far as I can tell, is that when you feel shame, you think that you're a bad person, right? You're just bad, inherently bad. When you feel guilt, that's about, hey, these things that I do are bad. So these actions that I took are bad, but you're not internalizing the badness or the deal. So that's the difference there.
Right.
Because it's like, hey, then how do you help other people out? Because if you're overweight, that's not healthy. It's not good. So maybe to the person who's overweight, they can say to themselves, well, hey, either I'm not exercising or my diet isn't correct, or it's a factor of the two, or let's throw sleep in there. So it's a factor of the three things. But for them to go, okay, I can do better at that instead of just saying I'm a loser, I'm overweight. You're never going to get better, and it's not a healthy, productive way to think.
Yeah. That it's interesting because it makes me think of like I also was in that mindset for a long time where I'd beat myself up to the point where I wouldn't even want to do anything anymore, and I just kind of sit there in my own misery. And I learned how to kind of be more kind to myself.
Yes.
But it's weird because sometimes you hear about like this motivational stuff and it's always about pushing hard and not, taking any prisoners and all this kind of stuff. And it's hard to have that and at the same time be like gentle and kind and all this to yourself, and I've been,
yep,
yeah.
Absolutely. So it really, what does kindness even mean? Because it is a crazy dichotomy where, like right now, there's a Navy SEAL sitting across from you and I'm talking about kindness, right? Not what you'd expect. And, but it is the most healthy way to live. It's the right way to treat other people, especially like, when someone's rude, do you come back at them with rudeness? No, that's not productive. You're the hardest. You are harder, and it takes more strength to return a frown with a smile than it does to return a frown with a frown, because you're just dropping down into fall into their level, and maybe you can just help lift people out. So, like, how do you kindly apply violence is something that I've been thinking of a lot, because. Okay, we go to war. Violence, it just is. I don't know that it's if to say that it's bad or it's good. It's not a tool that is I think your intent behind the application of violence is what makes it good or bad or inherently it is. Like, because if you're applying violence to stop evil, let's just say, and by evil I mean other people trying to do stuff that's just unsat. Mm-hmm. Murder, rape, pedophilia, or like fraud, stealing from other people. And there's, in a lot of times, there's no other way to stop that than to walk over and punch someone in the nose or shoot them. Mm-hmm. Really. And we're all part of these super organisms as people where, we have different cultures. And sometimes our cultures are going to collide with other cultures, and there's going to be violence at those friction points. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it is necessary. In my head, I can't think a way around that. Like, if we were just sitting in a circle chanting, which would be great if there was no violence, but that's not how it works. Then someone's going to come over and take all of our stuff.
Yeah.
and enslave everybody. And maybe someday we evolve out of that, but that just seems to be the law of nature, and that's how nature works.
That reminds me of this quote. It goes, "I'd rather be a warrior in the middle of a garden than a gardener in the middle of a war."
Yeah. Oh, who said that? Was that Alexander the Great? That was another Greek or someone that
Yeah,
threw that out.
I don't even remember who said it.
That's absolutely correct. And so where's now you're on that knife point,
Yeah.
where you've got to find that balance between the kindness, but that kindness isn't like, oh, hey, brother, you're tired, it's cold, skip leg day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's not being kind to yourself, really. That's just slacking off. But that's in a manner that feels like what kindness is, right? Hey, I'm going to cut myself a little slack, and I'm just going to wolf down that chocolate cake over there, and then later on, I'm going to skip leg day, and I'm going to drink 3 beers before I go to bed.
Yeah.
That while that feels like you're giving yourself a break in kindness, that's not what it is, or it's too much of it.
But it's weird because
that balance is what we got to strike.
Like some people, and I've been there before too. Like even though I know I'm slacking, like let's say Wednesday I'm supposed to do leg day, so I get ready and then I get to the gym. I do my warm up. This actually happened recently. I do my warm up, and then all of a sudden I feel no desire to be there. Like my brain is still saying, dude, you know why you're here. You want to be here because you want to be stronger. You want to be here so you can be healthy, and the list goes on. But my body just wasn't moving, and I just left. I left the gym, and I just kind of was kind to myself, and I basically said, all right, look, you took a bit of a break for a while, and it's taking you a while to get back into it. Just I think I did like a set of the easiest, shittiest squats ever, like 135 by 5 or something, 3 sets.
Yeah.
And then I just went home, and I felt that like beating up voice inside of me, but I knew that even though I just kind of slacked off, I shouldn't dwell on it too much, because if I do, now it's going to like throw me into a whole downward spiral about how much of a piece of shit I am. So instead what I did was I simply went, okay, you haven't been to the gym in a week. You just got back, plus you've been drinking and stuff this week, and fuck it, you just weren't feeling it. So the next time you go back, and I did, about 3 days later, I came back and I killed it, because I wasn't in my head about the other day. And if anything, the other day kind of got me ready to get back in there. But sometimes you have to have like a few false starts. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the biggest thing is going to the gym when you don't feel it. That's the biggest obstacle, and is just getting in the dang gym, even though you don't want to go anyway. And Jocko talks about that, when that's how he knows when he needs a break, is he'll just go anyway. And then if he's not feeling it, then he's like, my body needs a break. And you don't want to get rhabdo. That's kind of silly. That's the you're just pulled too far the other way if you're just overdoing that. So, finding a good that right spot, and it changes all the time. And just thinking about it is a good way on the path to figuring the stuff out.
Yeah, just being mindful of it and not like pretending that it's not going on. Like if you go to the gym and you're being a little bitch that day and you're kind of slacking, at least know that that's what's going on. But don't dwell on it, right? Like don't get into this whole hour-long thing where you're beating yourself up on the way back to the house, and then because you're in such a bad mood, you go, "Oh man, I'm such a piece of shit. I'm gonna make it even worse now and get a bag of chips just to numb myself even more." Mm-hmm. I've been there so many freaking times, and I'm starting to get out of it. Thank God, I'm starting to come out of it. And a big thing too that I realized, and I don't know if you've been experiencing this at all, but I used to lock myself into these routines, and I even have a tattoo. It says 365 in Latin, and it has a picture of my Spartan ownership logo.
Yeah.
And basically, about a year ago, a little over a year ago, I had a really bad week where I just was a complete piece of shit. Just laid around, didn't do anything. I was miserable, basically, and I was depressed at the time, and I got so mad at myself that I literally woke up in the morning, went to the tattoo parlor, got this tattooed, and I basically created a list of things that I would do for a whole year. And I called it the Spartan 365 challenge. And it was like, you have to work out 3 times minimum per week. You have to do at least 1 martial arts training session per week. You have to meditate at least 10 minutes a day. You have to. And I'd set up this whole rigid thing. And I tried living like that. And sometimes I would for 1 month, 2 months, month and a half, 20 days. But inevitably I'd fall off. And then I had this whole consequence thing that I would do. Like if I failed, I had to journal about it. I had to do burpees. I had to do this. I had to do that. And it was miserable. Like it was just nonstop me climbing up, falling off, and beating the shit out of myself. Climbing up, falling off, beating the shit out of myself. And it was just like that for months. And it got to the point where I was just over it. Like so neurotic about it that every waking moment of the day I'd be in my head thinking, wait, did I do this? Did I do that? So I basically recently rebelled against all of that and just went, all right, I'm gonna just go with how I feel more. Like I'm gonna actually ask myself, what does my body need right now? Does my body, and just listening to myself more. And now I don't have like a very hardcore routine, but I naturally go to the gym, and it usually averages out to 3 times a week. And I don't always eat the exact nutrition standard. It used to be 1 junk day every 2 weeks. That was the rule. And now maybe I'll have 2 junk days in a row, but then I won't eat anything bad for 10 days, and I'm just way less in my head about it because I've given myself some freaking room for flexibility and creativity. But before, I literally had this list and it had to be like that. And it was just really, really hard to maintain by myself. So any thoughts on that? Like switching up the routine, being more flexible?
Yeah, I mean, I think lists are good, but I think you gotta eat the elephant 1 bite at a time. And it sounded like you tried to eat the elephant in 1 bite.
Yeah.
With that. Completely reorganize your deal, it's just too hard to do. It's not realistic. I mean, I think maybe you give yourself 1 or 2 goals. You got to prioritize and execute. Hey, this is the most important thing, and I'm not working out right now, so I'm going to get back in the habit of working out. And habits, it's like walking through the snow. The first couple times it's really hard, but after that you've worn out this path, and then you just naturally do that, and then it's no factor, and then you build in the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So I think that's you want to be disciplined but not robotic. You want to have things to where that it's actually doable. And if you did stuff like you spelled out a whole year, that's just, it's not a recipe for success. And the other thing, at least, when you were struggling with depression, you identified it. And that's the first thing, is to identify it, identify those negative thought loops that you have. And then you just got to claw your way out of that pit. And there's no easy way to get out of it. And your body will want to pull you back down. That voice inside you will want to pull you back down, and you just have to lean into it. I tell you what helps me a lot is either good music can really reset my head. And so whether it's like I want to get fired up for a workout and I need to turn on Slayer or Spartan, who I just discovered, who's another pretty cool speed metal band, but all their songs are about war, which is even better. That is one of the tools that helps me getting outside, just getting my head right helps a lot. But yeah, man, you can't do everything at once, but you can lay a path out and choose things incrementally and get them fixed and then move on to the next one.
For sure. Do you ever break a routine that you've had for a while just because?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
All the time, I am struggling with eating right. Like, we just did a couple road trip vacations and we just completely fell off the wagon with working out. Mm-hmm. And so we were really, really disciplined, Iris and I, about getting up in the morning, and the first thing we would do is do P90 together for 45 minutes. And then we got thrown off track with the camping trip, and then we did another one, and then it went away completely. We went like 2 months where we didn't do any working out other than working outside. And then, a couple weeks ago, she's like, hey, I'm running in the morning. And I'm like, oh, heck yeah. We started getting up and we started running 3 miles every morning. And you know what? We don't run the whole 3 miles. Part of it is walking because we're building up to that running, but we're forcing ourselves to get out there and do it. So, heck yeah, I am far from perfect with the working out. And I think most people are, but I know that that's the ideal and where I need to be. And so that's what we're aiming at, and right now, since we're like on our second week back at it, it's not hard, right. We're not that rut has been carved in the snow, and it doesn't take a lot of effort to get out there and do it. It's just something I get out of bed and this is what I'm doing. Yeah,
it's good to hear that, that you still even make mistakes even at your level. I mean, it's just great for guys that are, younger to hear this kind of stuff, because we get into this mindset of, like, oh, I'm 25 and I still can't be disciplined enough to be perfect with nutrition yet.
Yeah.
Been there so many times, man.
Now the slippery slope with that is you just say, screw it, everybody else does it, and you slip off, and don't just let that be an excuse. But, I just turned 50 and I don't have this stuff dialed in, and I struggle with the diet and everything else. Although I'm doing pretty good with the diet, it's gotten to the point where that's not really much of a factor anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I could walk by a piece of pizza and not want to just gobble it up like the Cookie Monster, and that used to not be the case.
Right. What are you doing these days? Ketogenic or?
Just a generic paleo. Just trying to eat grass-fed meat, lots of fat, and green vegetables, and just trying to avoid processed stuff. Right. I think the most processed stuff that I have is the milk protein powder that I put in my coffee every day.
Nice.
But other than that, it's just real food.
What kind of coffee do you use?
There's a local company that roasts around here called Crandall Coffee.
Uh-huh.
That I go and buy their stuff from them. They're super cool people. So that's what I do. And so my coffee recipe has gotten extremely complicated. I do about 16 ounces of coffee, then a tablespoon of blackstrap molasses, which has got it's just got a bunch of magnesium in it and stuff like that you need. A tablespoon of MCT oil, 2 tablespoons of coconut oil, tablespoon of grass-fed butter, a teaspoon of half a teaspoon of cinnamon, half a teaspoon of turmeric powder, and it's crazy. I've gotten out of hand with it. And a half teaspoon of electrolytes mix that's just got pink sea salt and more magnesium and some potassium in it, and scoop of milk, hit that with a stick blender because it'd be a complete mess if you didn't blend it, and then drink it down.
Oh my God.
Then I think in that I'm taking in like most of the micronutrients I need for the day. Mm-hmm. I checked out that. Have you seen the snake diet?
Yeah.
We talked about that.
Yeah.
That guy's his YouTube videos, and I've kind of morphed my workout routine around what he's saying, where I'm doing a full body workout when I do lift weights.
Uh-huh.
And then I'm trying to reduce my eating, and I'm back to a 36-hour fast every Monday.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking of fasting, that is so powerful, I think. mentally, physically, and everything. I got into it too recently. I think the first time we spoke, you were talking about doing 36-hour fast every Monday. At that time, I wasn't really doing much fasting, but since then, I've tried multiple 24 hours, and I've done 2 3-day and a half ones.
Nice.
Yeah, and those were very interesting, and I'll tell you why. And towards day 3, I was feeling so irritable, by the way. Like, everything was pissing me off. I mean, a freaking fly could land on me, and I'll be like, what the fuck? Like, my whole, day would be ruined over a fly. And then I would eat, and I'd calm down. But I would say, and cool thing happened. On the 3rd day, I went on a hike around here because I was feeling very just, I don't know, it was spiritual or something. But I went on a hike the 3rd day, and I ended up spending a night in the forest. I was going to spend a night by myself, but there's a huge trail with a lot of people that pass by, and another guy was in the same shed I was going to sleep in, and he turned out to be a Vietnam vet, former Green Beret.
Kidding.
Yeah, former Green Beret, and he was in...
Wow.
He was in, like, operations planning or something, and he was telling me all this shit about Vietnam and how he thought it should have been a special ops war and that it didn't turn out to be like that and whatever. But he was still kicking at 70 years old, hiking by himself for a week or 2 at a time. And but what I wanted to talk about was your experiences with fasting, but also the mental aspect of it, because a lot of people just do it for health reasons, but I found it to be, and if you look at religions and stuff, almost all of them inevitably talk about fasting for spiritual reasons. And I noticed that, like, did you get that when you were fasting? Like, did you feel like your mind was just more clear, like you were thinking more positively, spiritual?
Yes. So one of the things you got to be careful with when you're fasting is make sure you're taking in a bunch of electrolytes, because the tendency is to drink a lot of water because you're like bored and like, I got to drink water because I'm hungry. So you drink the water and you wind up flushing all your electrolytes out and you'll rock some pretty bad headaches. So it's important that you take in enough electrolytes when you're fasting. But what I've noticed on I've done some 3-day fasts. On that 3rd day, man, I am sharp. For some reason, cognitively, I am just dialed in. And so I have noticed that. And I do think it's interesting that, the Bible talks about fasting. There's a bunch of different Christian religions that do it. And so several religions do it. Everybody, and so just because they're saying to do it doesn't mean it's good, but there seems to be a lot of science behind it. And so I think it's a good way to stay healthy. And since I've been fasting, my numbers are all really, really good health-wise. I mean, I had a buddy of mine have a heart attack and die, and it scared the crap out of me because, he was my age. I just turned 50. And so while I was in the Navy, I went and got every stinking test to look at my heart to make sure I wasn't in the same situation. And I got a contrast CT scan, which is the only way for them to actually get inside your arteries in your heart and see how much plaque buildup you have. And I was clean.
Wow.
And so and there may be a genetic aspect to that too. However, I think fasting helped with it a lot. I was always borderline hypertensive with high blood pressure. My blood pressure's perfect. All my numbers, when I get my blood tests are good. And I think fasting has got a huge part to play with that. And I believe it's the autophagy portion of it. When you fast longer than 30 hours, now your body starts looking around for broken cells to use as energy because you're not taking energy in. And so it'll identify any cells that aren't healthy and break them down first, right, before it breaks down healthy cells. So the theory is that you got any precancerous cells going around, body's going to clean all that stuff out. And then the other fact, with interval eating and stuff is is that you eat some food for the next 12 hours, you're in digestive mode. And then after that 12 hours is done, then your body's like, okay, we're done digesting stuff. Now we're going to fix and rebuild everything. And you kind of shift gears with what you're doing. And that's necessary, because I don't think that our hunter-gatherer ancestors ate 3 times a day.
Nah, no
now,
way.
In the summertime, they completely could have. Because, like, I walk around here in northeastern Washington in the summer, and there are berries and there's fruit everywhere. So they may have done it in the summer, but in the winter, I don't think they did.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting. And maybe I don't think anyone's any studies on cyclical eating habits based on the seasons.
Yeah.
But it may make sense that, okay, well, it's summertime. It's okay to take in a little more sugar via berries and fruit, because that's what's available. And then in the winter, when there isn't any, you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing that Rhonda Patrick has been exposing here is how good saunas are for you.
Uh-huh.
And then she just posted that what they think the reason that saunas are so good for you is when your body gets into a heat stress, there are several proteins it produces that are really, really good for your heart and your brain. Mm-hmm. And so that's why there's this data that they did over in Finland, where they did a study of people that sit in saunas, and their occurrence of stroke and heart disease is significantly reduced from the population that doesn't. And if you sit in a sauna every 4 or 5 days a week, it completely is bringing down the chances of you getting a heart attack or stroke. And it looks like the magic number is 160 degrees, mm-hmm. which points to probably a dry sauna over one of the infrared ones that I think they only get to 130 degrees. And there's a lot of data where they're saying that maybe it's better for you, but it's hard to tell who you can trust.
I wonder if the reason why it makes you healthy is because the heat puts your body into a kind of fight or flight. No, not fight or flight, but like a survival mode. And because you're in survival mode, it pumps out beneficial nutrients. And that's a big thing that
I think that's exactly what they're saying. You're putting your body under stress, and your body's getting into a survival mode. The other thing is, it's like the best way to detox. Period. So if you have heavy metal poisoning, they're gonna they'll make you, as part of your treatment, get in a sauna. So all the toxins that you're just taking in every day, living the lives we live, eating the food that we do, the best way to get it out of you is to just sweat it out. That aspect, and then the aspect you said of there being stress applied in your body going into that survival mode to deal with it,
right,
is nonetheless, I got to figure out how to get a sauna, and then at some point I'm going to get one of those float tanks, the sensory deprivation thing.
Yeah. I heard of that. That's more for meditation and stuff like that. Relaxation.
It's amazing. Yeah. Well, which is necessary.
Yeah.
You got to calm your brain down, and if you get on Groupon, you can find pretty decent prices on those float tanks. They're everywhere. I know that if you went and checked one out, you'd be able to find one that's at least within a half-hour driving distance from you.
I've been to one.
Oh, you have?
On
Okay.
one occasion, and it was cool.
How'd it go?
It was like, it wasn't the full experience because I could hear people walking in the hall, so I couldn't hear them talk that much, but their feet would create vibrations. And I don't know, it was my first time. I didn't really get into it too hard, but my buddy that was with me, he got into such deep meditation that when the people were banging on his tank to wake him up because it was time, he couldn't even get up, and they had to send me to open the door. I literally screamed into the tank. He couldn't get up. And then I grabbed his foot, and he was like, whoa! And then that's when he woke up. So
wow.
For some people, I don't know, for me, my mind is so goddamn restless. I mean, my mind races 24/7. I think 2 nights ago, I was trying to fall asleep, and my mind was just, and it's like that all the time, unless I really, do some breathing or do some hard training, and then I'm calm.
Yeah.
But some people just, I don't know if do you find it easy to get into a meditative state? I don't know how much.
No,
No.
no, I suffer from the same thing that you do. My head is just like ricocheting off everything all the time, and it takes a lot of effort to calm down. It takes a conscious effort to calm down. And with the float tank, my first experience with it, and I talked to some other guys who are claustrophobic, or they got in that thing and started working through some really heavy stuff, and the first time they did it wasn't a positive experience. But then the second and third time they went back, they really enjoyed it. I got in that, when I got in it, I think I was asleep in like 10 minutes. And then when I woke up, I felt like $1,000,000 where I just felt relaxed and calm.
Yeah.
I got out and I drove. On the drive home, there was really heavy traffic. And usually traffic freaks me out. And I was just like, no factor, you know. And it didn't bug me, so it's something that it's too difficult. I live in too rural an area, so until I get one, I've got to find another way to do it. But I think it's a neat way to kind of ground yourself and settle yourself out. But back to your original point, yeah, my mind is always racing, and it's you got to figure out how to calm it down, because you can't be racing all the time.
Yeah,
you just burn out.
One of the things I was thinking about that, because for me, I think part of the reason my mind is constantly racing, and this is a theory now, I don't know if it's true. Here I go theorizing again, but it could be because growing up, I grew up in Queens, you know, kind of a crappy neighborhood, didn't have any brothers, no father figure, nobody to really guide me at all. So anytime I get into trouble with the local neighborhood kids at school or anything, nobody really gave me any kind of guidance, and it was just really tough, and I always felt kind of like on the edge. And for some reason, I think I still had that until way later on. And I heard something recently about how when you go through something like that, your threat detector is basically always on, and it makes it hard for you to concentrate and get into a learning mindset where you can just relax and just learn something. Because I had like learning difficulties. I couldn't sit down and focus for a long time at all. And I wonder if it has to do with threat detection. You ever think about that? Like, I mean, I'm sure you have.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest struggle with PTSD is being hyper alert.
Yeah.
You know, it's like guys are like, I got PTSD, I can't go in a crowd. Yes, you can go in crowds. You just need to figure it out. You know, that was a big turning point for me, because of, you know, go on an 8-month combat deployment, and every single stressor is a fight or flight stressor. And then that reinforces all those neural pathways for that reaction, number one. And number two is you're always vigilant and hyper alert, because you have to be. It's survival mode. But you can't run your engine, you know, pegging out the RPMs like that all the time. And so you physically, once you're aware of it, then you're able to step back and just be more calm about it. And that probably is one of the issues, is that hyper alertness.
Do you find it hard to concentrate when you're in that kind of state? Like on something,
yes, no.
Like learning, for example. Like if you're trying to read, or if you're trying to learn a new skill, like that was the biggest thing for me.
Well, yeah, because you're going to have focus issues,
right?
You know, but then, like, I'll tell you, once that first bullet whizzes past your head or a rocket goes off in combat, then zip, you have ultra pure, ultra tight focus. There's no emotion and there's nothing else until the gunfight ends. And, you know, that may be just a result of adrenaline or cortisol, but it's good for a little bit, but your body can't exist like that all the time.
Yeah.
So figuring out how you're going to quiet your mind, and I think the Buddhists refer to it, you know, when they talk about meditation, is your monkey mind that's always chattering. Yeah. It's always chattering, cha 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 cha, and how to shut it up, right? And I absolutely struggle with that. And now But now that I've got, the mindfulness and just being aware, like, oh, okay, my mind is just my mind's just running. I'm just running my mouth right now in my mind. I need to calm it down and get control of it and quiet. But it's hard. Yeah, I got problems with it too. I bet you everybody does.
Yeah, it gives you a ton. Like when you're in that kind of state, it gives you tunnel vision, and you can't. And I'm talking like in daily life, not in combat. Obviously, when you're in combat and pressure sets in, okay, you're here to do a mission. But just throughout the day, sometimes I'm sure you get into that state. I know I get into that state where your mind is just racing. You're kind of hyper vigilant for no reason, and you get tunneled in. And I don't know. You can't think long term. I don't know if you had that experience either. You're just so dialed in.
Yep.
Yeah, and you get
absolutely.
Reactive. Emotional.
And you have to force your way out of it. You have to be in at 3 inches and then there for a period of time, and then you need to pull back out to 3,000 feet and look around and get your head up. And that it all comes back to just being aware of what is going on in your head and then detaching from it.
Yeah,
which is tricky.
And it's tricky on top of that because we live in a society now where I can go on Instagram right now and I can see, Dan Bilzerian or all these guys that are, billionaires and schmillionaires and living all kinds of lifestyles. And you start comparing yourself to all these people and you just you're never satisfied basically. I know you're older now and you've lived life and maybe you don't have those same thoughts, but I'm 24 and, I'm constantly.
How do you think it feels when you're 50 and then you see an article about a 24-year-old who is a millionaire, and at some point you just have to realize, okay, well, that's them, and then get some perspective. Like what I get a lot of perspective is from people watching, and I'll be like out shopping and see someone with like a horrible limp, or maybe they've got some kind of disability that they're dealing with, and I'm like, man, you know what? Why do I even fucking bitch? Because I got all my fingers and toes and all my joints work, and then that's the reset. That perspective is the reset to stop complaining to myself internally, and it's important. Everybody suffers from it.
And it sucks because it takes you out of the present moment, Before, we could have been in small villages where everybody had their role. They weren't comparing themselves as much because there wasn't all this crazy shit to compare to. Because you could be living in the top 10% of Americans. You got a car, you got a house. That's already so much better than how we used to have it. But now you're comparing it to all these other people that have 4 cars, and I'm starting to get those kinds of thoughts, I guess, because I'm getting older and I'm becoming more of an adult. It wasn't on my mind as much before, all this status, stuff like that. I used to be more of an independent kind of artist type, and I still am, I feel. But I've noticed those thoughts come in, and it's definitely it definitely takes something out of you.
It's so the perspective that you have to switch up to and think about it is time. And like, because your perspective is 25 years, you feel like you're in a big rush where maybe like waiting 5 years for a result is difficult to think about because that's a fifth of your life right now. Right. Whereas so being older, 5 years is a tenth of my life. And so thinking about something and it doesn't seem as long, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the other thing is like, you got to keep in mind too, and people post on Facebook. Nobody posts on Instagram or social media anything that's going to make them look stupid. At least I don't.
Right.
If you look at my feed, you think that everything's great all the time, and it isn't. I have problems and struggles and friction points like everybody else does. Everybody else does, but those those friction points are good because they just make us better.
For sure. And by the way, my buddy, one of my best buddies, Chad, he is an awesome dude. He's also very much on the path. He actually, for my birthday, bought me tickets to see Jocko in New York, and we did the podcast he did over there.
Yeah, that live one, that's awesome.
Yeah, I was there. It was great.
Good deal.
And I met Jocko. I got it he got swarmed, so I had like 2 seconds to shake his hand and take a photo, but then I spoke to Echo for like a good 20 minutes, and it was cool. And
Echo's really cool, isn't he?
He is. He's very chill.
Yeah. He's got a real easygoing, warm demeanor. I had no idea what to make of Echo just listening to him on the podcast, and was curious what I thought about him when I met him in person. And when I met him in person, I was like, oh, this guy is good to go. Yeah. Like he's one of those people that you basically want to have in your circle of friends because he just got kind of a positive outlook on everything and it's got a calming personality.
Oh my God, yeah. And Chad basically gave me a few questions to ask you, but to just on that point there, I think it's important too because I used to make this mistake, I think, before, where I would only try to look for guys that were, disciplined about working out, about doing this, about doing that. And after a while, I kind of got that. And me and Chad actually went through this a bit. And basically, I felt like, I was like, oh man, this is too much. Like, it's too much about mindset and all this shit. I just want somebody I can joke with about nothing.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have friends for that now, right? You've been there?
No, here's the deal. I used to be very rigid on the kind of friends that I kept and who I hung out with. And I just got stuck in a very small box. And now everybody has some kind of value. And if they're not a good person right now, they have the potential to be a good person.
Yeah.
And so I have really, really close friends that politically we are opposed 100% on most of our views, although they still have value. And actually, when we sit down and talk about a lot of things, we're off by small margins. And unfortunately, the media right now is polarizing everybody, and you're either in the far right or the far left, and there doesn't seem to be a place in the middle for everybody else to talk reasonably about a lot of stuff. But you have to have an Echo to offset every Jocko in your life, right?
Yeah, there we go. That's a beautiful way of putting it, because you can get into a mindset where you're just with guys that just talk about philosophy and discipline and training, and that's your only thing, and it just wears on you after a while. And it's good to have people to just joke with. Recently I've been isolated for a long time, so recently I just started going to a local pub and just shooting the shit with guys that are blue collar workers locally, whatever. I don't care, and it's fun to talk to them because they're not taking life so goddamn seriously all the time.
I watched a TED Talk, and they looked at people that live a long life. This is the data that the lady was quoting on this TED Talk, and I haven't researched any of it, but they said the biggest predictor to a long life is not diet and exercise, which is shocking to me, but that you actually get out and engage with people and talk with people every day, like everywhere you go. So I'm not sure that's more important than diet and exercise and fasting, but it's definitely a piece.
Yeah.
And it's something that I try to do. I'm trying to do more of it, and I notice that I feel better when I do. I notice that I am trying to work on my normal face, where I'm just walking around, no expression on my face, can look really harsh.
Right.
And so I'm trying to do a light smile for my normal face instead of just the resting bitch face that I have normally.
Oh, man.
And then I noticed that, when you're walking around with a smile, people will smile back at you, and that makes you feel good. and then it's a better way to just move through this life, I think.
Totally, man. I mean, growing up in New York City, everybody wants to walk around with a mean mug. And
Yeah,
for the longest time, everybody was telling me the same thing, like, "Hey, man, are you okay? You look angry." And I'm like, "Nah, I'm just hanging out." you know.
yeah.
Sure, you got that one. But I just wanted to drop
Oh,
in a
I've got
few.
that lots of times. You
Yeah,
know.
I'm just gonna drop in a few questions by my buddy here. He has a few, so I'm just gonna choose the ones I think are the best. Um, let's see. Boom, boom, boom. Here's one that's interesting, and it's kind of not really political, but it's along those lines. And I think I heard Jocko mention this once. But anyways, what is your opinion on artificial intelligence in the military when it comes to combat, basically? Like, I guess using, you know, guys that are on computers way behind the scenes that pilot maybe robots and all this kind of stuff. Like, what is your thought on that?
Why not? We should use every advantage that we've got to win. Period. So the guy sitting in a trailer back here, if we can project power like that and not risk American lives, good. Um, does the guy sitting in a trailer flying a UAV warrant a combat award? No.
Okay.
But it can should we do it? Absolutely. Anything we can do where we can leverage our what we call force multipliers through technology, yeah, we should do it. Could it be problematic for us in the future where like machines get really smart and decide that, in a Terminator scenario, maybe, and then we'll just figure it out when it comes. I'm not overly concerned about, AI. It's going to be interesting when these computers get this computing power because they're going to be able to look at problems and pull things into these equations that we just can't, and maybe come up with some amazing answers for a lot of different things.
Yeah, it's a scary thought for sure, though. Like the future and how weird and different it's going to be. I mean, all the people that are going to lose their jobs and everything, and it's going to get to a point
It'll
where
just transition though. The
so.
jobs are going to go away. Like I would be nervous if you're a cash register person. If you're working the cash register at a store, your time is probably limited on having a job because that is going to go away. If you're a truck driver, that job is probably going to go away. Find something else. There will be other jobs that can't go away. It'll be a long time before they replace an electrician that can come rewire your house, or a plumber, or SEALs.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
There may come a time when it's not required because machines can go do a lot of the jobs we do, but then we still need someone with the mindset that a SEAL has to problem solving. Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, so we'll go with that. I'm going to move on to the next one because he has a few here, and I know we're going to be running out of time soon. So, so his thing is that I'll preface the question with me and him have been getting into religion a little bit more recently, specifically Christianity. One of the reasons for that being that we were both kind of listening to a lot of the mindset, self-improvement, meditation, new age bullshit for a while, and I think we both kind of got tired of it because it seems like it was just coming out of anybody's ass that knew some mystical terminology. Like, so we started exploring Christianity because it's much more ancient. It's 2,000 years old, and there's so much more tradition behind it that it just feels much more grounding. So we've been getting into it a bit more, and we've been going to church a little bit and stuff like that, which got us starting to talk about, okay, well, if we're going to take this seriously at one point, how's our lives going to look? And this is why he asks, how important is it, in your opinion, for spouses to be on the same wavelength when it comes to religious faith?
Yeah, see, that's going to be tricky. Here's some. First of all, let me preface this by saying I'm not religious at all.
Okay.
But I was raised in the Catholic religion and went to Catholic school until I was in 8th grade. So there are some aspects of Christianity where it's, the man is the head of the household and stuff like that, and you're going to run into problems if you think that's how it's going to be and your wife doesn't agree with you. Typically, for something fundamentally or foundational as that, a relationship where you're both have the same beliefs is probably got a much bigger chance for success than one where you don't, because those are big foundational beliefs.
I actually remember you talking about that when we spoke a while back. You were saying how that your wife is someone that is also outdoorsy and things like that, which is very much a help for both of you because you're also into that.
What exactly? So you want to choose someone that at least for the most part shares your hobbies and your dreams and your aspirations and all that. Otherwise, it's just not a great partnership if you guys don't enjoy doing stuff together. And then so I think fundamentally, if you weren't lined up with your overall philosophy of life, that would be problematic for you.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think it's impossible, but it would definitely have its challenges that you would have to overcome.
Right.
I talked that earlier about returning a frown with a smile. That's classic Jesus Christ right there.
Yeah.
Right? And he told people to turn the other cheek. And he said a lot of stuff that unfortunately a lot of Christians don't follow. Right? And a lot of the heartache with organized religion is like when judge lest ye be judged, right? Or he who's sinless throw the first stone. The problems with it is people get up on a little pedestal and then they start judging other people. And they're not really Christians in the matter that they're not following Christ directly, right? It's hypocritical. It's annoying, but people will just destroy everything. They'll take a good thing and ruin it.
Yeah, I think for sure. I mean, you definitely see that a lot. No religion is really perfect. I think once again, what made us gravitate towards it again, another reason being the fact that it's just part of our culture in the U.S. and even in Europe. It goes. So it's a easier way to understand what's going on. Because let's say you wanted to become a Buddhist. Well, Buddhism is also tied into Eastern culture, and it's really ingrained in their society. So you might have a lot of difficulty understanding things because you've never lived over there.
Right. I heard an interesting argument where our Western culture is anchored in Judeo-Christian values.
Right.
And then Jordan Peterson was talking with a guy that was like, he wasn't buying it.
Okay.
He didn't think that was the case. And it was kind of an interesting discussion, and they both had super valid points. But the guy was this researcher, and he's actually a college professor, but he's looking at all the data, and he's showing how everything is getting better, right? Okay. There's less wars, there's less poverty, there is the environment. While we need to do better with the environment, it's getting better than what it was in the 50s and the 60s and stuff like that, because people are paying attention. The only thing that's getting worse is how much we're taking out of the ocean. But it's interesting to look at that, like, as a species, human beings are evolving, and we're doing better.
Right.
But I do think
Yeah.
fundamentally, those the Western cultures harbored in that. It also has a lot. It has a stinking lot to do with. I think the Greeks were the first ones that started talking about, hey, we're the rights of the individual over the rights of the whole. They have a lot to do with it, and they weren't necessarily
Christian.
Christian.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of our society also comes from Greek and Roman history. And
Mm-hmm.
also, I interviewed a guy. I don't know if you ever heard of him. His name's Adam Kokesh.
No,
Yeah, he's
but I'm
basically
terrible at names.
yeah, he's one of the guys that has a pretty big YouTube channel about libertarianism, and
Uh-huh.
he was a former Marine. He served in Iraq, I believe, and he does a lot of videos about the system, and he's kind of like, I think he's an anarcho capitalist or something.
Interesting. Yeah, I listen to some guys that talk about that. I find that when I boil down what my views are for a country and here, it's about liberty, it's about responsibility and freedom.
Yeah,
And if those are really my core values, and so then I take that and I apply it to different controversial issues, like, well, let's say women in combat.
mm-hmm.
Um, there is one standard, period, for what it takes to go into combat. You need to be able to lift so many pounds, do whatever. So your gender should not block you from being allowed to serve in combat, as long as you can make that standards. And we had law. The law went away, and it should, because as long as there's just one standard, and I got it. Like, there's two standards right now, and there shouldn't be. If there's one standard, if I'm applying freedom and liberty and responsibility to it, then women, if they want to be, should be allowed to serve. If sexual preference has nothing to do with how you perform in combat. So if someone is a homosexual, that should not bar them from being in the military. And thank goodness it doesn't anymore, because it's none of my freaking business what consenting adults do in their own bedroom. It isn't.
Right.
That's why we live in a free society. And that's where I think that's where, that's where we've got to go. And like, if consenting adults want to get into an arrangement where they want to have two spouses instead of just one, and that's what they have worked out, and there's not fraud involved, then that shouldn't be against the law.
Well, that's what they got with the Mormons, right?
I think they put those rules in there because people were mad at the Mormons, where, like, I don't think prior to there was polygamy laws on the books.
Yeah.
And then people just put them in there. But those laws, it's like, hey, if you want to smoke pot, if you want to take drugs, as long as it's in your house or you're not operating heavy equipment or putting someone else's life in danger, it's not the government's business.
Yeah.
What you're doing. So I find myself, like, I'm pretty much aligned with, well, I like the libertarian attitude, except for I don't agree with what their overall view is on the military. Like, they don't feel we should project power, and I think that would be problematic.
Right.
But other than that, and I just take these are my core values.
Yeah.
Freedom, liberty, and responsibility, and I apply them to problems. I'm honest about it, then I'm given these answers that I wouldn't have come to otherwise.
Yeah, and I think you're definitely not somebody that we can categorize either being on the far left or right. You're more of an independent because you have some interesting values. Like, the whole thing about women in combat is more liberal, but then you have other things like freedom, and I'm sure you're for guns and all that kind of stuff, which is more on the right.
Second Amendment.
Exactly. So those things kind of mix. I'm a bit more traditional. I think maybe I lean more on the right than you. But where I was going with Adam Kokesh was, he actually told me something, because he's a guy that's, has a shit ton more experience than me, of course, too. And I interviewed him back when I was, I don't know, like 21 or 22. So maybe my questions were a bit dumb. And he took a little bit of liberty, and he said, because he sensed that I was a bit at a loss for words. And he's like, look, if you don't know what to ask, sometimes ask the guy you're talking to what he thinks you should ask. So I was going to ask you, what do you actually feel, people should hear more? Because sometimes I get locked into my own biases, and I ask the same kind of questions. So am I missing out on something? Is there something you want to say that, a question I should ask you, or I don't know, something you think we should talk about?
Yeah, so that's great. I've got I've been drilling down in my head what my philosophies for life are. Before I get into that, though, on the women in combat thing, if the only reason you think that they shouldn't be in combat is that you think that guys won't be able to behave themselves around them, that's not an honest reason to bar entry from women to serve on the front lines. When you really just lay it out on the table, like the big arguments against it are guys will help them over their other friends, and guys, when their friends get killed, they're going to stop whatever they're doing and help their buddy. That's just how we're wired, and it really, I don't think sex has that much to do with it. And then, so then you're left with, well, they'll lower the standards. That's fair. But if there's one standard, and I guarantee you there are women out there that could meet that standard, they should not be barred from participating. If you're honest about, having these ideas of freedom, we can't have these laws that just say you can't do this or that. But that's a rabbit hole. That's a hot topic. I love talking about it, though. Okay, so I've developed my prime directives. I've got 4 of them.
Okay.
I dialed them down from some other stuff, and this is still a work in progress. So number 1 is harden the fuck up. And what does that mean? That means I'm tired and I don't want to do leg day. I need to harden the fuck up and go do legs. I'm out in public and someone was just rude to me. I need to harden the fuck up and not be rude back to them and just keep an even keel. It's cold outside. Harden the fuck up. That kind of thing. I like that because it's a tough, bloody knuckles type of attitude in there. And then number 2 is do the best I can and always strive to improve. So like when I'm comparing myself, I will compare myself against people I see on Instagram because that's a target I want to aim for. But really, I want to be better than I was yesterday. And I want to make those incremental process improvements, small ones, that'll get me down the road towards a goal of being a better person. 3, I want to treat myself and others with kindness and respect. So that means that I'm a good person when I'm walking around in public and I'm dealing with other people. And then when I got that internal dialogue that we opened up talking about it, that I'm not dragging myself down, putting an albatross, a big anchor around my neck and going to drown myself, Right. It's important to do externally. It's equally important to do internally. Then finally, be conscious of my impact on the environment. Just be aware of what I'm doing and how that impacts the environment. And that comes down to do I really need to throw a chemical fertilizer down on my lawn, or can I plant some damn clover out there so it can fix nitrogen? there's a lot of choices with things that I consume, and trash that I create that I should just think about. And I'm gonna, the environment. My Iris helped me out a lot, getting more aware of it, and then listen to Meat Eater podcast with Steve Rhinell, who talks about hunting, and he's very conscious of conservation, and it's a good thing to be conscious of, and so be aware of my impact in the world. Mm-hmm. In the bottom line, when I boil it all down, so those are my 4 prime directives. What is a person's worth? And for me, it's the how he treats his environment and how he or she treats other people and what they contribute to man and womankind and the people all around them.
Hell yeah. I like it.
And so the next question after that, is there such a thing as a worthless person?
I would say so. I mean,
yeah, there can be.
I would say there's a worthless way of living, but does that person have the power and the energy within them to contribute?
Yeah.
Okay, I hit
it. So I thought about that, because when you go down the road about what is a person's worth, and then you come up with like what a person's worth is what they give back, and then what they give back to how they give back to their environment. But then, are there worthless people? Yeah, but everyone has the potential to have some worth just by being a person, and so then that gives them that means everyone has value.
Right. Yep.
So another thing that I've stopped doing lately is I've stopped using generalization. I've tried to. I'm working on this. Stop doing generalizations. Stop using words like liberal or right winger or Nazi or hippie or stuff like that, because those generalizations aren't healthy, and then they just fuel kind of hatred. It's just not a good way to be.
Yeah, it's definitely more of an emotional conversation once you start using those terms than factual.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can say hipster to me, and I'll automatically get annoyed. But the reality is that
I doubt anybody would call you a hipster, though.
No, but it's like that was a group of people that was really fun to just like look down and ping on.
I used to live in Brooklyn, man. I know. I've seen a lot of freaking hipsters. Yeah.
But they have value too. But unfortunate fashion choices with the man bun or whatever. But whatever, it doesn't matter. And
yeah, they're artsy.
They actually, as a group, have done a lot to get people back to like hunting and farming and knowing where your food comes from, which is an interesting dichotomy.
That is true. I lived in Williamsburg, so we had, oh my God, so many hipsters over there. And it's always like a 40-year-old guy with, some kind of weird geometrical tattoo or something. He'd have a beard and a flannel shirt. That was the hipster archetype, and I did see that a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. Great
well,
talk.
I guess we can end it here. And this was definitely more free flowing. I felt like we were just at a bar shooting the shit just now.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Me too.
Yeah, it was awesome, and it was less rigid than before, where I was like, "What does being a man mean?" and all this stuff that it's kind of obvious at this point. Being a man is basically it's about taking responsibility and just being strong and doing all those things you said, hardening the fuck up and all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna use the discussion was a great way to. It's probably easier to absorb those concepts in this format that you laid out. I liked it better than the interview. So good call. Awesome. I'm glad you said that, because maybe I should switch up the trends a bit here. But yeah, Jason, awesome stuff as usual. This time it is 100% there. I don't want to say the word because I'm still embarrassed about it, but yeah, awesome stuff. And you're still working at Echelon Front, right?
Yep, still
Awesome.
a leadership instructor with Echelon Front, and I'm on Instagram at jason.n.gardner, which is really my favorite social media platform right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. So any of you guys listening that have businesses or any kind of organization that may need some leadership consulting, hit up Echelon Front. And awesome stuff as usual, Jason. And
Awesome.
yeah, man, we'll talk soon.
Yeah, let's do that for sure, Max.
Yeah.
Good talk.
Thank you so much.
All right, brother, out here.
Take care.
Yep.